Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Friday. Yeah, bo. Love Fridays. Welcome to it. My name is Cilliers Ngobese, aka Big Daddy Liberty. As I said, this is Vuka Nazo. So if you're watching this morning's show, please do me a favor. Hit that like button and, of course, share the stream. Help me reach a much wider audience. And if you're watching on YouTube in particular, guys, subscribe to the channel. Help me reach my goal of 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. A reminder to you that we have a website. That's bigdaddyliberty.com. There, of course, you can also pledge some financial support to the show. Anything between 50 to 100 Rand, 75 Rand is the sweet spot that we receive from people per month. And we encourage you to support the show. Now, enough with the jibber jabber. Oh, it's a Friday, which means Moemish of the week at the end of the segment. So keep an eye for that. But let's get straight into the news. All right, we begin here this morning with opposition to the EFF's planned shutdown on Monday gaining steam. You remember yesterday's Vuka Nazo, we covered this issue where I mentioned that the business community are not interested in this shutdown by the EFF. For as much as the EFF is saying, oh, this is a national shutdown. No, it's not. This is an EFF shutdown. It's planning to shut down the country, and South Africans, the nation, if you will, is definitely opposed to this. What do I mean? Well, the latest, of course, is now Santaco, the taxi operators in this country, issuing a very stern and very terse warning to the EFF for it not to disrupt taxi operations on Monday. Now, let me take a quick pause here. Do not mess with the taxi industry. For as much as I have my gripes with the taxi industry, because they themselves can also act like absolute hooligans when they want something, the fact of the matter is, the bottom line is, do not mess with these guys when they are trying to actually conduct business as business people. Like every other business in this country, they are experiencing very tough trading environment at the moment. And trust me, taxi operators do not mess around with their bread. Again, don't take it from me. Let me read this News 24 piece, which basically wrote up the warning from Santaco to the Red Berets. Its national spokesperson, Ubafana Magagula, said the economy had already been knocked down by the COVID-19 pandemic, high inflation, fluctuating petrol prices, and of course, recent taxi fare increases. He's directly quoted as having said, we're looking at the shutdown as more of an injury to the economy. Firstly, we're not even part of planning that strike, and our drivers are fully aware that we don't condone the shutdown at all. He said there were more than 250,000 Santaco affiliated drivers and that all of them had agreed that they would not participate in the shutdown. End of quote. Now, you've got to understand something. I think Umakakula, the spokesperson to Santaco, is absolutely spot on. The economy just is not conducive to something like this. And beyond that, as business people, they recognize the asinine nature of commies like the EFF, people who have no intention of building anything, of progress or anything that is positive. These are people, commies, that is the EFF in particular, are people who operate in the world of disrupting and destroying things for their purposes, for their selfish political needs. And it's very interesting to see Santaco come out here as a very loud voice and say, actually, they want nothing or no part in it. Now, again, as I end this segment, I'll say this. The EFF ought to be very, very careful on Monday and to tread very carefully, because Santaco and taxi operators in particular, for as much as we have our gripes with them and we'll exchange bitter words with the odd taxi driver on the street, the one thing you need to understand is they are very organized and they will protect their own drivers' lives, their passengers, and their property. All right, to Cape Town now is where I take you, where law enforcement in this country, goodness me, seemingly is stepping up its efforts to fight corruption and do so without fear or favor. The officers of the city of Cape Town, that's right, the DA-run city of Cape Town, were raided by the Hawks and law enforcement this week. Indeed, phones, computers, documents being confiscated and placed into evidence, including that of a MAYCO member for human settlements in the city, Umalusi Boy. Now, Umalusi Boy, of course, is not a stranger to the show. We've covered issues before of this particular department, only insofar as the good work that it does do in building human settlements in Cape Town and the threats to various projects by construction mafias in Cape Town. So that was a story we've covered in the past, but seemingly this particular department within the city of Cape Town under investigation by law enforcement after revelations, of course, of corruption within construction tenders and contracts and irregularities in that regard. Now, I'm going to read this EWN piece which wrote up the story as follows. Now, as I said, the city confirming that particular raid on its offices in Cape Town, with the police's Andre Trout saying the operation formed part of an investigation into fraud and corruption. He said electronic equipment and documents were confiscated, end of quote. Now, before I come back to this piece, I want to give you a sense of the difference, perhaps. Even though this is not a particularly good story for the DA, not that I necessarily care, because hashtag politicians are trash. Yes, even your favorite politicians. Stop looking to politicians for salvation, people. But nonetheless, even though the story is not a particularly good one for the DA, it's how they respond, though, which I'm going to give them a little bit of kudos for. With the mayor of Cape Town, GEORDIN Hill-Lewis, basically, unlike any other politician, especially ANC politicians, effectively saying, hey man, we take this in their stride, and GEORDIN Hill-Lewis saying he won't fail to act against his own MAYCO member, Umalusi Boy, if there is concrete evidence that comes out of this. The mayor himself was quoted in this piece as having said the following. Now, Mayor GEORDIN Hill-Lewis said he was taking the matter very seriously and that he had requested the Provincial Commercial Crimes Unit to brief him on why the operation happened. He's quoted directly as saying, I wasn't informed about this particular operation in advance, and I'm still not privy to what it's about, but I've spoken to Councillor Boy, that's the MAYCO member. I've made it clear that I regard it as very serious and that my first responsibility is to protect the integrity of my government. That's a quote by the mayor of Cape Town, GEORDIN Hill-Lewis, end of quote. Again, it's that difference for me, which I must say I found slightly impressive, because if this raid, for instance, had happened in any ANC office, trust you me, there would have been obfuscation, excuses, pointing fingers elsewhere, and generally not taking accountability for this action. It is a one difference between the ANC and the DA in this country, and it's one which we'll keep an eye on, because not only is this a developing story, it also points to law enforcement in this country seemingly ramping up its efforts to combat corruption and fraud wherever it happens without fear or favor. Let's just hope the same thing and the same energy is used by the Hawks when combating Eskom fraud and corruption there too, and the other cases of it. But nonetheless, we'll keep an eye on this story. All right, it is that exciting time of every Friday edition of the show when we have either a champ of the week, someone who's done something commendable or a great deed that was done in the week, or a momish of the week, a blunder of the week, or loser of the week. What do we have this week? We have a momish. And who is our momish of the week? The DA caucus leader of Tshwane, Cilliers, Brink, and the DA in Tshwane. And why are the DA and Cilliers, Brink our momish of the week? Well, the blunder this week of them effectively having spoilt their own ballots when they were trying to vote in a new speaker for the Tshwane municipality. Now, you remember the speaker of Tshwane, who used to be a one Moronyo Makwarela, who then backstabbed them into becoming the mayor of Tshwane, leaving that vacancy, of course, for speaker in the council. In this past week, as they were trying to vote in a new speaker, the DA decided, oh no, it's not going to do an X to mark its particular votes, but rather would number the votes from 1 to 69, effectively the number of councillors in that particular metro council of the DA. And indeed, the IEC saying you can't do that. You can't use a vote in a way in which it identifies the person voting. I showed you the handbook of the IEC, which basically detailed that at section 9.9, effectively saying the IEC must reject a ballot if it in any way identifies the voter in the particular case. The DA, of course, in a huff, saying, oh, it's not going to accept this, blah, 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 blah. only to find that they're actually wrong, and that the action that they've said they'll take of consulting their own attorneys came back and pretty much confirmed that they were wrong. Let me read, of course, the latest on this particular matter, where the DA hasn't even offered an apology to its coalition partners for fluffing that vote, and more importantly, an apology to voters for having fluffed that particular vote, because now the ANC EFF candidate, A1 Mncedi Mzwanana of the ATM, he now sits at top of the council as the speaker, and that places, of course, the ANC EFF coalition in a strong position to reclaim that municipality. Now, as I said, I would really like to see the DA offer an apology to residents of Tshwane for fluffing that vote, because trust you me, if you're a Tshwane or a Pretoria resident at the moment, the topsy-turvy and the disruptions and indeed the chaos that characterizes your municipality effectively means service delivery is not a priority. The Reform Coalition, as they like to sort of be broadly coined, that's the DA Action SA and its coalition buddies, has to get their act together, because for a lot of voters, they're watching what is happening during the local government and are wondering, will we see the same thing if coalitions need to be formed after the 2024 national election? All right, that's it for this edition of Vuka Nazo, the Friday edition. Let me know what you think, of course, about these stories. We will have a Vuka Nazo next week, Monday, but we will not have one on the holiday. That's on a Tuesday. So just a word of warning in that regard. I will see you on Sunday night for my usual Sunday night long format show. That's Liberty and Friends, where we provide the solid and compelling analysis on the news week that was. So keep an eye out for that on Sundays at 8 p.m. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed the content. Show me how you did. Enjoy it by hitting that like button and, of course, sharing this particular stream. And guys, remember, we have a website. Find us, please, at BigDaddyLiberty.com. With that being said, happy weekend and Shabbat Shalom. I'll see you either this Sunday or next week, Monday, for another episode of Vuka Nazo.